Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has used his social media platforms to call for calm following a fresh upsurge in riots linked to the election results. Now, the country's top court upheld the results of the disputed October presidential elections on Monday. Many in Mozambique, particularly young people, were hoping that independent candidate Venancio Mondlane will win the elections. Protesters are still out in the streets of Mozambique's major cities, and that comes despite Mozambican President-elect Daniel Chapo saying he is ready to lead the electoral reform process in Maputo. So to chat a little bit more on this, we're joined by the director at Africa-Asia Dialogues, Thembisa Fakude. Thembisa, good morning. Merry Christmas on that matter, on that note as well. Thank you for joining us at this hour. Perhaps we're obviously not looking at we're looking at what's happening in Mozambique. It seems like it's a rather grim Christmas start for them. So as we're looking at the ways of change at large in the SADC region as well, the elections in Mozambique, in Namibia, the elections in Botswana, the elections in South Africa, perhaps also, sought to inspire Mozambicans for some socio-economic political relief and change. But now the reactions following the Constitutional Council's announcement. What are you observing on that front in terms of what's the dynamics unfolding in Mozambique?
I think there's obviously a disappointment from the youth in particular that there hasn't or is not going to be change, because they've been observing what's been happening in SADC, particularly in South Africa, as you correctly put it, Botswana and Namibia. There's been change. So the challenge against traditional freedom fighters or freedom fighters in the form of Frelimo, in this case, in South Africa, ANC and others, SWAPO, have been facing challenges. And the Mozambicans expected that at least they were going to have the same change or the new political setup as in these countries I've just mentioned. But of course, they're disappointed. The recount and the announcement by the Constitutional Court did not really help, because it came up with different results. So from 71% to 67% for Daniel Chapo, again, raises concern. And I think that's what angered many people, the fact that the results have changed. Many felt that it was indeed a rigged election, and they took to the streets, as we saw yesterday, but unfortunately it's going to impact on the stability in Mozambique and to a large extent impact on our economy as well as South Africans.
Absolutely, and we're going to delve into that. I think just before we get to that point, I really wanted to look at the impact that it's going to have in Mozambique firstly. I mean, Frelimo has been declared the winner, Daniel Chapo, president-elect. How are they actually going to rule, given the dynamics unfolding with so much resistance, perhaps as we're speaking?
Well, we'll have to see. I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations. There's going to be a lot of olive branches extended, particularly to those that do not make it, whether it's Renamo independent candidates that participated in these elections. And that might just, we heard yesterday, for example, that some of the political parties were speaking to former President Nyusi of Mozambique, who is part and parcel of the Frelimo establishment. So we hope that there's going to be some sort of stability. But again, we have to be careful of these political compromises because of political parties or opponents refusing to accept the results, because that is not necessarily a long-term solution. We've seen what's happening in other countries when that is done. So we'll have to wait and see. Perhaps new positions are going to be created to cater for opposition to be part and parcel of the new government. But it looks set that Daniel Chapo is going to be the president and is going to be supported by SADC and the EU and other regional powers.
Thank you for speaking to that, because it's now, just going back to your earlier point about the implications at large beyond Mozambican borders, South Africa-Mozambique relations, the economic implications as well, but also perhaps also for the SADC region at large.
Yeah, the SADC is on tenterhooks. Luckily, we don't have next coming elections, but what we've seen so far, we've seen a change in political setups. The only countries, of course, that are resisting the change are, amongst others, Zimbabwe, Swaziland, and Lesotho. So we'll have to see what happens there. I mean, Lesotho also had its own elections, which was to an extent peaceful. But I think the spotlight is going to be on two countries that have refused or resisted change. in the SADC. That is Swaziland and Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is accused of being part and parcel of the instability in many countries, including Mozambique. So we'll have to see what happens after that. But I think the SADC winds of change, political winds of change, are blowing all over, and there is pressure now, and many of those that resisted changes are on the back foot to embrace changes. And I think the country that's leading that change, notwithstanding that we still have the same political party governing, is South Africa. South Africa was given a political shock in May, and you've seen that other countries following suit. So the Mozambicans expected it. So that's what I think will happen come next elections, particularly in Zimbabwe.
Thembisa, I mean, beyond what you've said, I mean, it's festive season, so I'm looking at the tourism aspects that come into play here, the impact that has had, the backlog at the borders now as well, particularly that the processing has been suspended at the Lebombo border in particular. But I also want to look at the elephant in the room, because there are obviously also concerns in terms of what is being monitored at this hour, the possibility of political refugees, without alluding to anything, of course. Talk to us about the possibilities on that front that's coming through.
Well, there's a serious possibility. If things go out of control, which can go out of control, you are likely to see Mozambicans crossing the border coming to South Africa. By the way, we've got a very weak border between South Africa and Mozambique. So there's a high possibility, and South Africa has to do something very urgently, including with other leaders in SADC, to prevent turmoil and instability escalating in Mozambique. So there is a very strong possibility that you might just see that happening, and it will be very difficult for South Africans to prevent Mozambicans to come to this country if problems heightened in Mozambique. So I'm certain that South African government is preparing itself, and talks are afoot to make sure that the current political stalemate in Mozambique is sorted, because it's South Africa that's going to suffer. But economically also we're going to have a problem with maritime traffic coming our way. Because of the challenges of the Red Sea, we have many ships coming our way, and Mozambique has been assisting South Africa, particularly the Durban port, in terms of making sure that goods are coming our way, and those that need to go out to other countries from South African businessmen are also having that chance of doing so. So businessmen are quite worried at the moment, because that road N4 leading to Lebombo border has been very busy and impacting on South African business. Now with this, you are going to have N3 going to Durban, now chock-a-block once again, and one wonders whether they will be able to deal with the traffic that's going to be coming their way following what's happening at the moment in Mozambique.
What's happening today, I mean, obviously also we have to look back at how this also all came to be, but even the historical relationships. South Africa, I would assume, would also look at how they have to manage, rather tread carefully rather at this point, because of their historic ties with Frelimo, particularly as they're also engaging with the opposition. How do you think they're going to be balancing those dynamics?
Well, they're trying so far. I saw the statement yesterday from DERCO, did not want to take sides, but again, this is South Africa. It has tended to often biting more than it can chew when it comes to matters of foreign policy. But we hope, of course, that this time around today we're going to maintain that position and making sure that no one is offended at the moment. As I've said, notwithstanding their relationship with Frelimo, they have to be very careful, because what we hear at the moment is that the South African trucks heading towards the Maputo border, or those that are going into Mozambique, have been specifically targeted, because young people in Maputo or in Mozambique view or see South Africa as supportive of Frelimo because of that relationship. So they have to be extremely careful, and not just careful in terms of actions, but in terms of rhetoric as well, and communication. Communication must be loud and clear in expressing their non-aligned or non-preference in terms of politics this time around. They mustn't, I would suggest, be seen in any way or form to be siding with Frelimo, because there is a anger within the streets of various cities in Mozambique, and they expect South Africa to act accordingly, making sure that the stability is brought back into the streets of Mozambique.
Thembisa, let's leave that conversation there for now. We obviously are monitoring developments as dynamics unfold from here. And to thank you again for joining us at this hour.